ours.
Yeah. Which should have been recorded, not.
Welcome back to another great episode of Security Hot Podcast. Today I'm joined by a esteemed doctor with a show of his own, After Hours Dr. Samuel Sigoloff. Thank you so much for being here today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. First, I must say, I got to give the disclaimer. Any view that I express is solely held by myself, not the DOD, not the U.S. government, and not the Department of the Army.
Perfect.
Yeah, there we go. All right, all the special incantations out of the way. Now we can get to real business.
I think we as a nation, we're hitting a very critical stage where a lot of people that were under the spell of Dr. Fauci and it felt like the inquisitors are starting to wake up, and they're starting to realize that, like, okay, maybe this wasn't really sound logic and science. Maybe we should have been questioning a lot more. And now we're moving into this phase where everybody wants to forget and push it all behind us. Like, we don't need to talk about all the things we did, like fire people, ruin people's lives, ruin careers. But let's slow it down a little bit. Let's talk about what really happened, because it's important to remember that a lot of us were deeply affected, not just our livelihoods, but our health, our mental and physical health. And I think that who else to talk about it today than yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And
yeah.
You may just give like a 30,000 foot view of what happened, or do you may get a little more in depth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Both. I got nothing but time, my man.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you again for having me on. I truly appreciate it. This is great to be able to share my story with you and with your listeners. So my story starts in, March of 2020, when the whole COVID, when we went on the lockdown and all that. I was in Alaska at the time, stationed in Alaska, and I felt I was the healthiest doctor at that institution. You know, it may be a bit of hubris for me, but anyhow, I felt I was the healthiest doctor. And so I volunteered to go out into the COVID clinic. And at the time, you know, putting yourself back in that situation, I thought it was going to be like, 1918 or the Black Plague, or, I'm like, okay, I set up for myself to stay out in our shed where it was like below zero every morning still.
Oh.
to stay out in the shed if I needed to, if I got sick, so I wouldn't get the family sick, blah, blah, blah. And
with
because of our mission set, because of our mission set there, we had a PCR test early on. And so I was able to, you had to have 2 criteria to be able to test. And I was like, oh, you choked on water and coughed. Okay, let's count that as a symptom and let's go ahead and test you. And so, I was testing everyone. And a month and a half out there, they're like, Sigoloff, we need you back in the clinic. Get back to work. You're not doing anything out there because there's not been a single positive test. I mean, to give you an idea how crazy people were, this one guy, I thought he was going to drive right through our tent because he's like, I need to be tested. It's like, you don't even have a sore throat. You don't have any, I can't even pull loss of taste out of you or cough or anything. You have no symptoms.
I'm envisioning a sci-fi world, sort of like the Omega Man.
Yeah.
I need to be tested, damn it. Someone test me.
And he's like sitting outside in his truck, and we're in a tent with like these huge space heat, like propane space heaters, which is probably not healthy.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, don't worry about that. That'll be on the disability. It was so cold, like the thermometers we were using, we had to put heat packs on them to keep them warm because the batteries are shut down.
Oh, Jesus.
And this guy's out there like squealing his tires and his brakes and everything, just trying to, like, thinking he's making us think he's going to drive through it.
Yeah.
People were crazy.
Yeah.
you were there. Yeah. And then, you progress a bit of time and you learn more and you're like, well, that's weird that nobody was positive. Okay. Maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And then we go to like March of 21 when the ingredient list of Pfizer and Moderna was published. And I look at the ingredient list and I'm looking and I see these great big compound names that I have no idea what they are. Basically, you can condense them down to the name of DSPC and DSPE. It's like, all right, Google. Oh, look, here's a safety data sheet. Oh, look at that. It is not validated for human use. Oh, that's interesting. We're injecting something that's not validated for human use. Oh, let me go to the U.S. patent website. Okay, DSPC and DSPE are lumped together, made by the same company, patented by the same person in the same patent, and they're made to get drugs through the blood-brain barrier. Well, wait a second. I thought I was told that it's supposed to go into my arm and stay in my arm. So why did they put a compound in there that's going to take it through the blood-brain barrier?
How dare you ask questions?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Dare use common sense. And the thing with the blood-brain barrier, to kind of explain that a bit, because that might be a little bit of, inside baseball. And I say that not knowing really what that term means because I don't watch sports. But anyhow, so you have these certain barriers in your body, like the blood testes barrier or the blood retina barrier or the blood brain barrier. And the idea is between the cells that make up your vessels, there's little spaces. Well, in those specific areas, your body puts extra effort and work and lots of energy into making no spaces so that things can't get through there. So infection can't travel straight to the brain. So your white cells can't be just floating around in your brain going, hey, let's muck around with this thing a little bit and see what happens. Right. That's not what you want. And so that's a challenge. It's a challenge in medicine, is getting medications to that blood-brain, through that blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
And, the gestalt at the time, the zeitgeist was, well, it goes in your arm, it stays in your arm. But here I found direct proof that they put something in there to get it into your brain. So I started, telling patients, hey, this compound in there is not validated for human use. A lot of the toxicology reports on this report are classified. It's not a government document, so I don't know how they can say that it's. So, like I was counseling patients and telling them, look, they put this compound in there to get it through the blood-brain barrier. These compounds, they're not validated for human use. The toxicology reports are classified by the company that makes them. I'm going to tell you what's good if I can figure out what might be good, because they say that it might reduce your rate of infection, but we don't know. They're using this idea of IgG, antibody response, but just because you make an antibody doesn't mean that antibody is going to do what you want it to do by preventing infection. We don't know what the long-term effects are. I told patients that if you're an adult, you're over 18, you're not breastfeeding, you're not pregnant, sure, go ahead, enter into this experiment, because this is an experiment and it's an experimental drug. But if you're under 18, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, you should not experiment on yourself. You shouldn't be allowed to. I recommend you don't. We tell pregnant women and breastfeeding women not to drink, not to smoke, but many do. And they have problems with that often. I also said that with this being mRNA or DNA, because I think the DNA one is actually more scary to me, because it doesn't have to change anything to insert itself into your DNA. And the example that I like to use is chicken pox. So chicken pox is a ubiquitous virus. Everybody gets it, right? When you get older, people get shingles. Well, it's the same virus. That virus is a DNA virus. And what it does is it inserts itself into your DNA, and you carry it with you for the rest of your life. Then when your immune system gets suppressed, you get shingles. It's the same virus.
Yeah. And
so, to me, J&J was more concerning, because there is doesn't have to convert to DNA. It already is DNA. It just goes right in. The mRNA, everyone says, oh, it's messenger RNA. No, it's not. Even Robert Malone is beginning to say this now, that it's not messenger. He's saying that it's different than what he made. He made messenger RNA. Now this is modified nucleoside mRNA, which means they changed out a nucleotide in there to a different one that our body cannot break down. And they didn't study how long it stays in the human body. It's like, well, that could be a problem, couldn't it? Yeah. It might be fine. Might be perfectly fine. Who knows? But it could be a problem. And so just before I PCS to my next duty station, I got counseled by my boss, and he said, Sigoloff, quit telling people not to get the shot. But sir, I've never said that. You can tell people to get it. That's fine. But don't tell them not to get it. And sir, I've just given the pros and the cons. I have no pros to give. But if I could find one, I would give it. But I've got lots of cons. And I would tell, because the position I was in when I was in Alaska, I was mostly seeing beneficiaries. So that's like spouses and retirees. And so I had this pool, of patients that were mostly spouses of service members. And I told them, look, every commander saying it's not mandatory yet, which means you need to plan ahead. What are you willing to do? Okay, so it becomes mandatory. If you really don't want to get it, you need to think about what you're going to do before you get to that point. you're going to be read on a list. Okay. What does that mean? Okay. So they harass him a little bit. They say, okay, well, you need to get the shot. Okay. Are they going to grab him and hold him down and give him the shot? Because then I recommend you use whatever force is appropriate for that moment. If someone's grabbing you and putting something in your body against your will, that's medical assault, that's rape, that's all these different things that you want to use. And then we flash forward to my current duty station, Fort Huachuca. I was interviewed. They selected me to be the medical director. And so that's so there's the commander, there's the deputy of clinical services. That's number 2 in charge, and he's a doctor. And then number 3 was me of this clinic. There's no hospital services here. And that's when the whole COVID mandate started coming down. That was August 24th is when the Secretary of Defense said, all right, everyone has to get it. And it was interesting the way they worded this. They said, the local commanders will ensure that there are adequate supply of DOD approved vaccines.
Yep.
Whoa, that was not a mistake. You have lawyers pouring through these orders to write them. To say DOD approved vaccines is not a mistake when the DOD doesn't approve these. The FDA does. And then it says that service members will, it's a legal order to tell service members to take an approved vaccine, blah, blah, blah. However, if the approved vaccines are not available, then service members may volunteer to take one of the EUA products. And that's a really important distinction right there, because the FDA, they may have approved Pfizer for about 24 hours, but that approval went away and it's never been made. So the only thing ever available has been EUA. And if it says on the vial, the vial itself, EUA, then that's what it is, because that's what FDA does, is they control labeling. So you can't say, well, it's got a different label, so it's the same thing. You can't do that, because that's what the FDA does.
No.
And telling a service member to take an EUA product is unlawful and illegal under USC or 1107, 10 USC 1107, and I think it's 25 360B1. And that's all case law. That's law that was put on the books from Doe versus Rumsfeld. And that was the anthrax case back in 2004, because they were telling service members, you got to get this, you got to get this. It was all EUA, and many people got injured by that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know people who were injured by that, and hopefully you were not injured by it.
I think the amount of anthrax shots that we were given from 2007 till I left 82nd in 2011 was up to serious fucking 12. Wow. When we got back from our last deployment, before I went to selection, they had these blood trucks lined up outside of our our medical, your pediatric area. Whenever you come back from deployment, they were giving you, hey, we'll give you $20 if you let us take a sample of your blood work. I was like, $20 is $20, dude. Fuck yeah. On Fort Bragg. That should tell you something. Something was fucked up with the amount of anthrax vaccines that were given us. Are you fucking kidding me? Series 12? And you get so desensitized. I know I was. For the rest of my military career, they're like, hey, we need you to take X, Y, and Z. Fuck it, whatever, dude. Mefloquine, here, take these pills, take them. All right, cool, man, whatever. Are you fucking kidding me? We're taking
Arsenic,
pills.
Sure.
Yeah. That gives us fucking psychotic nightmares. And now when they finally push the envelope too fucking far, and we say, wait a fucking second. You've put how many foreign things in my body, and now you're mad at me for raising my hand and asking for some fucking clarity? Come on.
Right. Oh, it's insane. And so it's been illegal from the start, because and what's really, I've been truly blessed coming to this duty station, because multiple reasons, but one of those small blessings is Doe from Doe versus Rumsfeld lives right down the street from me. I got to sit with him. Yeah. And he's the one that put the case law in effect that we're using, that we have been trampled, that our rights have been trampled on. And people, I'm sure you have at least a few listeners that have not been military. And to all those listeners out there, oh, well, you signed the dotted line and you gave up your rights. Bullshit.
Yep.
We fight. We signed up to support and defend the Constitution. And this is a Constitution declaration that I'm holding up. We do not lose those rights ever. Now, yeah, we can't speak about political things while in uniform, blah, blah. Okay, that's very different than you can't speak. That's very different than you don't have sovereignty over your body. Those are completely different things. And the law is actually in our favor. We have the moral and the legal high ground on this fight. And so I was like, well, how can I work around this? Right. Because I like to dip, dodge, duck and dive around things. Be that fly in the ointment. And as the medical director, I told my staff, because this is my position, right? When there's complex medical issues, don't try and figure it out. Don't argue with the patient. Just send the message to me. I'll contact the patient. We'll get them taken care of. And so remember that information I told you a while back, right?
Yeah.
These compounds were not validated for human use. One of them was not even validated for veterinary use. So you can't give it to animals, but here we are coercing service members to take it. And it's like, well, there's got to be a way I can write
another example of how our canines on the teams are taken care of far better than we are.
Yes, much better. Which is like, yes, they're valuable, but more than human life. That's a hard sale for me.
Don't get me wrong. I love the fur missiles. They're great, but Jesus.
But you couldn't.
Where's the vaccine for the dogs?
Yeah. And so I thought, well, let me write a medical exemption. Let me look at the law. So AR 40-562, which was published back in 2013, it says that the primary care provider or the PCM will determine if a medical exemption is necessary and will grant that medical exemption if necessary. And if not, then they won't grant it. Okay. Well, I'm a board certified family physician, so let me grant these medical exemptions to these people. I did appropriate evaluations, right? I saw them in person, or I talked to them on the phone, and reviewed their chart, looked at their history, family history, everything. And then at the end of the day, they got a document that later blossomed into an affidavit that's in Robert v. Austin. And that affidavit, I can't talk about the affidavit. Sorry, I'm active duty. I can't talk about lawsuits against the government. But I won't talk about the lawsuit against the government. But what I will talk about is my medical exemption. You see that little dive there, which is virtually the same document. And the basis is, this, in layman's terms, this stuff is poison, right? It's not validated for human use. It says on there that all safety relies on the end user, and it should only be used by an experienced scientist in labs that are adequately protected. So basically, the company that makes these lipid nanoparticles are like, well, you hurt yourself, you're on your own.
It's on you, man.
You bought it, you wanted it, there you go. Yeah. And so my patients, they didn't want to be poisoned, and I don't think they should be poisoned. And so, again, I'm being careless with that term poison. It's dangerous, and there's no safety data behind it. In fact, there's evidence that it is, at the time, there was evidence that it could be dangerous. Now we know it is dangerous, and your risk of infection goes up, your risk of death goes up the more shots you have. But yeah, so I was giving those only to service members, and I started giving that on the 28th of August, and by the 9th of September, one of those exemptions got back to a battalion commander. Battalion commander emailed my boss. My boss said, "Oh, we'll make sure that doctor knows he's not supposed to be doing that." Oh, okay. And then I have to retract all. I get what I looked at the time as a legal order. Now it's clearly illegal. Order from my commander saying you need to retract all those. So I called up every patient. I said, hey, despite my 9 years clinical experience, and despite my opinion has not changed at all, I have been given a military order by my commander to retract your medical exemption. And they'd be like, why are you saying like that? Read between the lines. My opinion has not changed. I have been ordered to retract this. Which, looking back now, my hospital commander, I won't say her name here because I've never said her name in public because she's afraid I might hurt her. She's actually since had me escorted out of the building because of a post that I reposted by a group that I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of at least once or twice. But there was a picture of the Secretary of Defense with a circle around him and a slash across his face. The slash was a syringe, and they said I was threatening the Secretary of Defense. Yeah. These are, and well, let me rephrase that. Whoever owned the account, the handle on Instagram that has After Hours with Dr. Sigoloff did this, and they happen to, you can figure out why I'm saying it that way. And whatever person who posted that also used the Dougherty song, Traitor. And they were like, why did you pick that song? It's like, I don't know. Maybe you should ask the guy who owns that handle. Oh, you're asking me. I declined to answer if I own that handle or not.
Yeah.
And that's how the 15.6 rolled out. It's like, we couldn't determine if he owns that handle or not.
Damn it, we just don't know.
But anyhow, so let's go back in time. So then September 10th rolls around. This is 21. My hospital commander comes, and so she already practiced medicine without a license, right? She's a registered nurse. She made unique medical decisions on specific patients by rejecting their medical exemptions. That's practicing. That's a felony, right? Yeah. When you get this investigated so that we get charges pressed for the felony level practicing medicine without a license that she's already done. We'll get into me trying to report that in a little bit. And then she bans the off-label use of ivermectin, a life-saving medication that is very common for doctors to use off-label. She gives me a memo, hand delivers it to me, I guess because she's that kind of person. And she says that she reviewed as a nurse, registered nurse, not as a nurse practitioner, not as anyone who's licensed or privileged to practice at our institution. She reviewed the information and she said, yeah, we're not going to be using this off-label, even though it was covered by TRICARE at the time, which means Congress said, this is a medication we're going to pay for. She knows better than Congress.
Well, I mean, she watched The View. She watched a very well-informed episode of The View.
Which would have caused problems because I would have disobeyed that order. You know I probably wouldn't be able to get it filled online or on post, but I would have given hand scripts for that. The problem is I didn't have an opportunity to write any because by the 13th, which was the next business day, a Monday, I was thrown in summary suspension for, get this, not following the guidance, because I guess the Secretary of Defense is a medical expert, not following the Secretary of Defense guidance on medical exemptions. Well, that was the 13th of September. You know what's really interesting? You want to try and guess what day the guidance came out? You can't make this up. The very next day, the 14th of September, his guidance came out.
Come on!
And what's even more wild is the guidance. Like, if you look at it in retrospect, I did everything it said because it was just a reinstatement of what was in that AR 40-562 that was published in 2013. So here we are. What day is today? Today is Cinco de Mayo of 2023, and I still have not seen a patient since before September 13th of 21.
Wow. Make it make sense. Just make it make sense. So you remember I mentioned how my hospital commander, this is not a legal, this is my opinion that I believe she is practicing medicine without a license, and I'll have all the proof for any agency that wants to investigate this. I'll happily provide any proof if you're listening. But so I went to the MPs, military police. They said, oh, you should go talk to the lawyer. Well, how many times when someone gets murdered do you send a lawyer in? You usually send the cops. Right, because when we commit crimes, we don't send in the lawyers, we send in the police. But anyhow, so I went to the lawyer, and they're like, well, we don't really know how we could do that. I went to IG. They're like, oh, well, commanders can practice medicine without a license. Oh, okay. Oh. I went to local sheriff. I went to local police. I went to the FBI. FBI blew me off, right? Like, if you search practicing medicine without a license, you're going to find all these case reports, all these news articles of the FBI kicking doors down. Yeah.
But they didn't care. So I went to CID, which is like, for those that don't know, that's the Army's version of the FBI. Blown off the first time. Yeah, he's like, that's not a serious crime. Dude, people may die.
I'm sure she has diplomatic immunity.
Yeah. And so I went back a second time. And the second time, it was just before I was going on Stu Peters. And this may have been across the line, but the way I look at it is, if you're a man and you're proud of your work, you'll put your name behind it.
Yeah.
Right? So I said, all right, sir, if this is the stance you want to take, where you refuse to investigate this serious crime, I'm going on Stu Peters later today, and I'm going to use your name and say how you're refusing to do that. And then he finally called me back and we talked, and I didn't put his name out. But then I got a counseling statement, as you might imagine, for threatening the special agent in charge. And part of that counseling, I had to write an essay, just like when you're in high school. And one of the topics of
no,
yes,
no.
yes. And one of the topics of that essay was Article 94. Like, this is where the shit gets real, right? Because Article 94 is mutiny and sedition. And that comes with a max penalty of death, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So I turn in my paper and I use the principles of Jordan Peterson, don't lie. I tell the truth, at least don't lie. And it was not what this guy wanted. Like, I will tell you, this essay was not what he wanted.
I have taken many an ass chewing in my career. I have stood in front of the man and gotten smacked down a few times, but I've never, as a professional senior military leader, have I ever been trying to like stand up against tyranny and be told that you will write an essay.
Yeah.
You go home and you write this essay.
Yeah. I want you to cover military leadership. I want you to cover, just all this BS. Personal courage. Yeah. But the Article 94 part of it, I was like, ooh, veiled threat. Can we say veiled threat? Minimally veiled threat.
Yeah.
And so I turned it in. And again, it was not what he wanted. It was not flowery. It was not nice. It was pointed directly at him for making me do this. And he said, whoever taught you how to write like this, you should be ashamed. Just like the most unprofessional critique of a college, of a high school essay you've ever heard. And so he ordered me, direct order, to rewrite it again.
Joke's on you. I use Chat GPT.
Yeah. And so I go back, I do it again. And this time it's even more precise.
Nice.
More sharp. And I made it very careful not to cross that libel area, because this guy's, that's the kind of guy he is. He would charge me libel. Yeah. And he threatened, so I turned it back in and he's like, Sigoloff, if you making these kinds of allegations and blah, 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 you need to support it or I'm going to investigate blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so he orders me to rewrite it a third time.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And so I'm like, hello, Garrison Commander. I need to see you right now. Go see him. Guess who didn't have to rewrite that a third time?
Oh my God. Like, this is just absurd. Like, this cannot be.
And this is a lieutenant colonel. And this same guy, this lieutenant colonel, like, we did a urine drug screen at one point. This is before all this started happening. And, you guys always take off their blouses. And he's got like this broom handle sticking out of his belt. And it's like a K-bar. It's like, dude, we're in a clinic. Over like 3 inches is a concealed weapon.
You never know what I'll.
Yeah. And so now let's go back. When he's calling me to his office to do all this stuff, I'm like, sir, I'm concerned for my safety. As I know you carry a concealed weapon on you. And I just looked in my email inbox and just last week, you were teaching a course on how to kill someone with a knife. And then it says to hide the evidence.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of lab techs and medics that might be behind enemy lines with a K-bar.
This guy sounds like if you look up boner in Western in Texas dictionary, it's gonna be a picture of this fucking dude.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh. And so my wife, she got upset with all this stuff and she put in a congressional investigation and that resulted in nothing. And then at some point I got a congressional investigation sent to me. It was addressed to me. It was my home address. You open it up. Like, dude, this is not me. Sorry, bro. You're having some problems. I need to figure out how to get this back to whoever it needs to get back to. So I call online, I call on post and, there's the headquarters command of Huachuca, like the big boys, right? Yeah. And I call over there and the guy who wrote the letter, I said, hey, I got your letter here. He's like, oh, yeah. I'd like to have that back, please. Yeah, just bring that by as quick as you can. Thank you. It's some lieutenant who's getting just having problems. Let's put it that way. Just having some problems.
Yeah.
And so I drive over to this big command building. I walk in, and there's some captain who's like giving me the eye as I walk by. I go into this. It's a guy who's a senior executive service, SES, one of those guys. And I give him the letter, and he's like, "Thank you. Just leave it there."
Yeah.
And I walk out. I get back to my office. Phone rings. My boss. "Hi, how you doing?" And he says, "Oh yeah, someone just saw you in the command suite." Who? And our commander wants to know, is there something wrong? I said, "Well, I was just doing a good turn." How would she know that? Is she spying on me? "Oh, well, the general's aide saw you and called our commander right away." Oh, so she is spying on me. Okay, good. Yeah. And the same commander also saw some guy driving around his white truck, and my boss came to me and said, "Sam, were you in your office earlier today?" "Yeah, we just had a meeting. We were all standing next to each other about 5 minutes ago, and then you came in here. I'm right here. So, what's the problem?" And "Oh, well, the commander's seen you driving around in your white truck." "Sir, I don't have a white truck." He's like, "Yeah, I know. I told her that. I told her you don't have a white truck." So is she saying that like all white guys look the same, all Hispanic guys look the same, all guys with Jewish last names look the same? Where are we going with this, sir? Like, again, is she spying on me? Am I, like, I'm not doing anything in my office anyways. I've been suspended. So what if I am driving my fictitious white truck around? Yeah, I mean, this is just...
It's getting crazier and crazier by the minute. Like, that's just ridiculous.
That's when I started security rounds. So, in medicine, we do rounds on patients. Well, in a clinic, when you're suspended, consider doing this security rounds where you just walk around and you wave to every security camera every few hours, just so you have proof.
I'm here.
Hi, guys. And I think one of the best parts of this whole thing was in July. So this is before I was escorted out of the clinic. I was still in the clinic. I get an email that says, "Tomorrow there's a threat working group." And it's addressed to the 902nd, which, if anyone knows, 902nd does counterintelligence, basically spying on people who they think are terrorists. Yeah. Yes. There's like 6 people on this email, and I'm like, "Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, I go to church with him." I call my buddy up. I was like, "Hey, what's the deal?" He's like, "Dude, quit messing around." He's like, "Check your email." "Oh, okay. Yeah, let me check my email." Holy crap. You're the subject of tomorrow's threat working group.
But you're the email.
They emailed it to me. Yes.
For our audience at home that may not be familiar with threat working groups, that would be like me and my counterparts on a team coming together to put together a target packet, and then we email the
target packet. Yeah,
the target that we're going to be deving on.
It's like, this is like right after 9/11. You're like, okay, we're gonna look into Osama bin Laden. Okay, how do I spell his name? Let me put on the CC line here. Bin Laden. Okay, there we go. Send. And so I call the guy that sent me this, the true insider threat, not me, but the one who sent me the email saying that I was part of the threat working group. I called him and said, "Hey, sir, Sam Sigoloff here. What time are we having this meeting? Because it didn't, or where are we having this meeting? Because it didn't say where. It just said, who is this? Major Sam Sigoloff, the subject of today's threat working group." Click.
All right, I can just see it. Yeah. All right, everybody, just go around the table, introduce yourself. I'm
Major Sam Sigoloff. What's he doing here?
He did get a formal invitation, sir. Damn it!
He was on the CC line. Yeah.
Let him stay.
Yeah.
This is for what you could do.
I mean, this is home of Army Intel.
Military intel.
You can't even say.
Oh God.
They say military intelligence is an oxymoron, but this is proof.
Dummies. Just dummies.
And this is given off the surface, right? I mean, It goes into a bit deeper. The guy that carries the the saber in his pants. He actually wrote me a letter that says he printed on government owned paper. He printed it at work.
Nice.
He addressed it to Mr., which even in civilian, I'm not Mr., especially this guy, call me doctor. Most people I'm like, just call me Sam. But this guy, he says, Mr. and Mrs. Sigoloff, if you and your wife, okay, where are we going with this? If you and your wife continue this harassment and starting of congressional investigations, then I will be required to take legal and civil action against you. Oh, okay. So you're threatening me. You're threatening my wife for talking to a congresswoman. Just let that marinate for a minute.
Yeah,
that's
that
actually
makes sense.
Clearly illegal.
No, because I was doing it from work. So
yeah, and he signed no title, just his name. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, in the lawsuit against the Secretary of Defense, which I can't really get into too much, but the hospital commander threw that guy under the bus and said, yeah, he's been reprimanded by a couple stars already. So good.
Nice.
Not good enough, but it's a start.
It's a start. Yeah. It blows my mind that people that stupid can rise to ranks that high and just stay there without somebody being like, okay, common sense check. Clearly you're a fucking moron. Like, I get it. We can't just get rid of you, but at least let's remove you from having any sort of command influence. Cheese and rice, people.
Well, what's interesting about the military is, in the civilian world, cream rises, right?
Yeah.
The best day in. Yeah. Well, in the military world, yeah, the best rise until they hit that hard wall like I hit, where when you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, nobody likes it.
Yeah.
And you go through something like, or even not even as bad as this, but you hit this wall and you're like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to get burned out staying here. I'm going to leave. And so, I'm sure, as you know, in the enlisted ranks, I'm not sure what grade that is, but in the officer ranks, it's kind of around major, where people are like, I'm done with this, man. I'm guessing E6, E7 is probably. Yeah. And the warrant officer, I have no clue. I don't have enough experience with you guys.
Unfortunately, it's unique. I think for a lot of warrant officers, you want to make lasting change, and you know that being a warrant, you have that unique ability, especially in SOF, where your continuity, you can be there to help guide the younger people, but at some point you realize, no, I can't really truly affect change because you're promoting a faster rate of idiots that will take command of the ship and still fucking drive it into the fucking harbor. And it's like, no, at some point you have to say, okay, the boys are going to have to take care of themselves. I have to take care of myself. And for that, I am out. Like, especially with this with the COVID crisis, that really made you draw that definitive line. What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? Am I willing to give up my health, my reproductive abilities, like family? There's a lot of people that are now having issues with that. And they drew that line. They said, okay, well, I'll stick it through. I'll get the 2 jabs. And then they push that line. Well, now we need you to get the booster, and we need you to get the booster max. But if you want to if you want to do this career move, we also need you to get the booster max pro. Now, this option guarantees that if you do get COVID, it may or may not be as bad. So what's the benefit of any of it?
Why would I do that?
There's no benefit. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the Booster Max Pro 7. It's guaranteed to be worse than COVID, but then you won't get the Omni variant. or the Sigma.
That's not around anymore, right?
It's like nothing worked the way they said it was going to work. And then they started getting mad at people that were questioning, raising their hands, asking real questions. Like, okay, so I'm supposed to get this shot so I don't get this. Yeah. Okay. But you got both shots. Yep. And a booster. Uh-huh. But you still got sick. Well, yeah. Don't question science. It's like, okay, fuck, dude.
Well, and at the time, like the death rate in the military, there was like 26 deaths. So you do the math, and the survival rate is 99.986% survival rate. Like, I'll take those odds to Vegas every day.
All day.
Twice on Sunday.
Day. Yeah. I'm not morbidly obese. I'm always working out. I'm eating wonderful quality food at the dining facility. Odds are in my favor.
No, one of this, I heard this said the other day, and this is a I think it's the motto, but of the West Point guys, and it says a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. And I just want to throw this out there that if anybody knows a West Point doctor, if a West Point doctor told you that the COVID shot was safe and effective, they lied.
Yeah.
If a West Point doctor told your spouse that it was safe and effective, they cheated your spouse time away from your children. And if a West Point doctor they cheated your spouse time. And if a West Point doctor told you that it was safe and effective, then they stole time between you and your spouse. Because I don't know any West Point doctor that stood up against this.
Yeah.
And then didn't tolerate it in others. There may be a few that are quietly saying nothing, but that toleration, you tolerate it because what we tolerate, the next generation expects.
Absolutely.
And if we don't fight this fight and leave it for our children, they won't have the tools to be able to fight.
That's the truth right there. That's what it boils down to. But just like anything else, recently, it's just forget. Leave it all alone. Just move forward. Don't ask questions. And everything that people were speculating, everything that was being asked to dig a little more, ask a few more questions, it's all come out. It's all flushed out. All the concerns are and everything that we were being told, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're one of those Alex Jones people. Well, shit. Now all the things you were fucking calling us crazy about, it's all come to light that it was true. It
was a lab leak.
Whole list. Yeah.
It was a lab leak. Could have changed your DNA. Well, in the test tube, it does change the DNA. You know, it didn't prevent infection. Well, okay, it doesn't prevent. It's going to, hurt your heart. Okay, it does. I mean, just everything. And it's worse than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And it's not about if you got the shot or if you didn't. Right. Because there's plenty of good people that were, in a terrible situation. There's plenty of good people that were, lied to by their doctor. Right. And it's safe and effective. Oh, yeah, you can take it in pregnancy. Well, then how come all the studies show that they excluded pregnant and breastfeeding women and they told the men, wait 60 days until your last dose before you get your wife pregnant? There's a reason why. So anybody that any doctor that said anything different, they made that out of whole cloth lie because it didn't come from anywhere. And anybody here who has received the shot and is having some bad side effects, please check out my podcast. Like, I know that I don't mean to make such a shameless plug, but
no, plug it. We're going to plug it afterwards. We're going to put it in the episode description.
Okay. But there's some stuff that you may find real value from. I have this Dr. Anna Mahika, and she talks about different treatments that can help get it out. I have Dr. Manuel Aprecio come on. He talks about chlorine dioxide. Now, I'm not saying you should take it, but you should learn about it, because if I said you should take it as a treatment, the FDA may have me arrested. So I would never do that. But it's something that I take. There's a couple episodes I talked to Dr. Lee Merritt, and we talk about chlorine dioxide. We talk about antiparasitic medications. Again, the chlorine dioxide is not a treatment plan for you. It is something that I take. And if you feel it's right for you, then you should learn about it, but you shouldn't have the information suppressed. That's the issue.
And that's the key right there. Don't suppress information. Don't attack people for having valid questions. Don't demonize half the population because they want to raise their hand and say, hey, wait a second. This doesn't make sense to me. Like, I wasn't born here. I was born in Panama. I know what it's like to take, and suffer from mumps. A lot of Americans don't. Like, you get vaccinated by that. Vaccines are important. They keep us safe when they work and when they don't damage us. Like, nobody that I know that's an intelligent, critical thinker is saying, well, I'm never getting any vaccine. Nobody's saying that. They're saying the same thing that a lot of us have said, that, hey, wait a fucking second.
I do have to throw a caveat in there.
Throw it.
So if I knew this before my kids were old enough to have gotten any vaccines, they never would have gotten any vaccine ever, because we can't trust them, right? When someone lies to you and lies to you and lies to you and then lies to you and then lies to you, how do you know when they're telling the truth? Because they've only ever lied.
Yeah.
And so my kids will never receive any more vaccines. I wish they never got any. I'm glad they weren't injured.
Yeah. I know that's controversial for a lot of people, but it's like, hey, I'm a product of taking vaccines when I was early, but none of the vaccines I ever took made things worse for me. I never woke up one morning and say, fuck, that yellow fever or the measles vaccine, all these fucking shots are making it worse for me. Like, no. But I did have to get 2 shots of a vaccine that was told to me, you're not going to have any side effects of this. This thing is great for you. You're never going to get COVID. And then I still get COVID. Like, what the fuck?
But even the fact that you were told it's a vaccine, it's
exactly.
Not. It's a gene therapy. And they actually did a 15-6 investigation against me because my boss came to me. He's a doctor, and he said, Sigoloff, you shouldn't be calling this a gene therapy. And I said, well, sir, I don't have a different word that describes it better, but I call it a gene therapy vaccine. Because there you go. I'll call it that to make some concession. Okay. Well, did you hear an order in there? I never heard an order in there. All I heard was you shouldn't, and shouldn't is not, you will not, by direct order. And so they did a 15-6 investigation into me to determine if I was ordered to not call it gene therapy, right? So this is suppression of my First Amendment right, especially when it comes to informed consent. And so I did not listen to that. I later, that 15-6 culminated in nothing, except there was one report that got me a general officer memorandum of record, a report, GOMAR, because I told some captain, this is when I was ordered to get the shot. It was 16 September of 21. This captain sitting there, I said, hey, this is an illegal order. This is unlawful. And if you want to get together afterwards, not in this venue because there's a bunch of privates sitting around us, but I can tell you why it's illegal and unlawful. And so that's why I got a GOMAR, because I was doing my duty.
What are we supposed to do as leaders in the military?
Yeah, just shut up and color.
The most fundamental thing you're supposed to always do, take care of your fucking men. Take care of your guys.
And as we're saying this, right, I got to put this in perspective. We're in a gymnasium. And I don't know if you saw that video where the guy is sitting there and he's holding up this piece of paper and it says, I do this under duress. Yes. It's the same gymnasium. That was that weekend. And while I'm telling this guy this, there's this other guy sitting on the bleachers who just got the shot. And he's like, my arm is going numb down to my fingers. Is that normal? And the nurse comes by, oh, yeah, that happens all the time. No, it doesn't.
No, it fucking doesn't.
That's not normal. And that shouldn't happen. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It
is. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And one of the things that really bothers me is how we forced a lot of individuals to take something that they didn't want. They went through the right, what you said was the right avenue of approach to get a medical exemption, and you still denied it. They still fucking denied, like, hey, I know a lot of guys that had religious exemptions that they went, got done, submitted them, and came back like, no, we're not going to honor that. This is what you said I needed to do in order to prove that. And I did it. And I have it here. And they literally said, well, yeah, I see it, but fuck you, get the shot.
But needs of the army. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're go ahead. Sorry.
For all the listeners out there that, let's say they applied for a religious accommodation and they were denied it by their commander, you're in a good position because they have opened themselves up for significant litigation. And you should look into that, into suing your commander for denying your religious accommodation. And really, religious accommodation is a misnomer. You can be an atheist and have a deeply held belief that it is bad for you and still get through that same law, still get those protections.
I feel that we have just as much issues with moral injury here stateside with this, just like we've had guys downrange coming back from kinetic deployments, from horrible situations and having moral injury. And that's justified. So we can go to the VA and we can get PTSD all day, signed off for what we did downrange. But at the end of it, moral injury is not looked at the same way. And what are these kids? What are these individuals who are suffering from having to take this shot under duress? What's the outlook for them? I mean, on this show, we focus a lot on the mental health and how to overcome, adapt, and get back to that mentality to thrive, not just survive. And I want to ask you, you're the man, boots on the ground on this fight, day in, day out, and you have a great attitude. You have a great way of keeping it contained. But how are you surviving? How are you and your family doing? How are you guys?
Our family's doing some of the best we've ever done. And, for those that aren't religious, I'm not saying you got to be the same religion, but look into it, right? Explore that, wrestle with it. The name Israel means one who wrestles with God. And there's a reason why his name was changed to that, because when the angel of the Lord and Jacob wrestled, right? Jacob was this kind of, and this is from Judeo-Christian background. This is from the Bible. Jacob was this guy who he ran from his problems. And we see how well that works in society, running from your problems. And it never works. And this guy shows up and it says it's the angel of the Lord. And so he wrestles with them all night long. And the angel of the Lord, breaks his hip, dislocates his hip, right? And so you can imagine that that's a bit of a problem back then. And so he limps the rest of the days of his life. But before he would let go of this angel of the Lord, he said, give me a blessing. And he gave him a blessing and he changed his name. And I think that the breaking of his hip the dislocation of his hip was a part of that blessing. Because now you can't run from your problems.
Mm.
You have to stay there and face them. And, like Jordan Peterson says, turn and face it. Don't just be there cowering, but turn and face it head on. And it does a lot for your psyche, and it helps you get through that. And, there's, for those of you that have received the shot and let's say regret it or don't want it, or, certainly look into the things to help your body. I mentioned some of those already. Look at my podcast. But there's always redemption at the foot of the cross.
You're already in the arena. Might as well fucking fight. Might as well do something to help your mind, body, and your spirit. And that's something that all of us can take away from this. Don't let your health slip away from your hands. You have control of it. And I say that because it's so easy to let go of your health these days. Whether you're just eating shitty food, you're not working out, you're not putting the focus into doing something hard every single day. And it's as simple as doing a walk. It's as simple as doing body weight workouts. You don't have to be the next Thor, but if you don't put emphasis on your physical body, if you don't put emphasis on working out, being able to move, your health is going to slip away from you. And now having this foreign shit going through your body, it's even more of a motivator to say, you know what, like I got to do something. I need, or go ahead.
Yeah. And the caveat to that. So I just came back from an FLCCC conference on how to treat people who have been vaccine injured. And one thing that seemed to hurt people more, and this is really heartbreaking, is the really intense workout. Seems to make the day worse. So if you, let's say you're injured and you do a really intense workout in the next few days, week or so, you're like rough. Don't do that, but don't do nothing either. Right? Get over yourself. Eat that humble pie and just be like, I'm going for a walk today.
Yeah. Because
then you're getting outside, you're getting the sunlight. That near IR infrared is good for your body. It's good for your mind. It's good for your soul. And you're moving, which is also good for you. But that super intense exercise can actually make it worse.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to go back to the basics. Yes. Go back to the basics and start. Even if you were an avid runner, even if you were the guy that was able to crush 10, 15 miles every other day, dial it back, go back to the beginning, start a new program. And that's something that I noticed with a lot of people when they got sick with COVID, they got the vaccines, the endurance, their performance was shot and it pissed them off. Like, oh, fuck. Oh God. Like where's that athlete that I've been for friggin' decades now? Like now I'm just going to get pissed and not go back and do like, no, go back, start working out, start doing little by little. You're going to get it back. I even struggle with that.
Yeah. Walk is a workout.
It truly is. And like you said, getting out every morning and getting some exposure. Like I'm lucky. I live in Florida. I get to do beach walks. I get to be out with the sun when the sun's out. But if you live in a place where, you got to adjust your schedule, do it. You only got one life to live. Time is our most precious resource.
Amen.
Put your health first.
Because when you don't put your health first, you don't just cheat it from yourself. You cheat it from your spouse. You cheat it from your friends. You cheat it from your kids. You cheat it from everyone around you.
Yeah.
And some people have been dealt some hard cards. But you gotta do what you can do. Make it the best.
Absolutely.
Joy doesn't come from the situation. Joy comes from above.
Yep. Yeah, I can't thank you enough for being here today with us, sharing your experience. I don't want anybody to go through this. If you have issues, if you have questions, go to Spotify, go to iTunes podcast store, check out After Hours with Dr. Sigoloff, get informed, and don't just sit in the same echo chamber of opinions and information. Be an amateur scientist. Be willing to put on that hat to okay, I need to learn about this. Maybe I'm not the only one experiencing these side effects. And get information from various sources. Don't sit in front of the TV show or Alex Jones and just listen to one point of view. Go out, make informed decisions. And it starts by looking for people that have experience, that have information. Because otherwise you're just letting life happen. Don't let it happen to you. Be informed, be willing to do the research. Like there's so much information out there. Be educated, be a critical thinker, and start asking questions about your own health and the own issues that you're going to be facing. Don't let other people determine what steps you take. Take life in your own hands and start getting educated on things. Sam, thank you so much for being here today. Once again, what's the name of your podcast?
It's After Hours with Dr. Sigoloff. And if you don't mind, I'd like to do a little plug for my Give, Send, Go.
Yes.
This is not something that I've mentioned yet so far, but I am suing the DOD, Secretary of Defense in particular, because of all the egregious things they've done to me. And I'm in this unique position to where my case is not moot. So many of these cases are moot because the mandate has been rescinded, which that's a whole legal discussion right there. Mine is not moot because of the Fifth Amendment violations they've put against me and the Whistleblower Protection Act that they've done to me. And in this fight, I hope to get case law put into the books, just like Doe in Doe versus Rumsfeld got case law put into the books so that this doesn't happen again. I have spent well over $75,000 of my own money to do this so far. One thing that I did do is I was selling some patches. I'm currently out of patches and I don't have any plans to make any more, but I have these stickers that say Plandemic Reprimando, COVID-19 reprimanded ranks. They're about $2, and it's just a way that you can help support me and get something cool some cool swag to show off to your friends. But if you want to just donate or give prayers, please sign into our Give, Send, Go.
Absolutely. We'll put the link at the bottom of the episode description. And as soon as you're done listening to this, just go back and click on that and help us help Sam. Thank you so much for being here today, brother.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's been fun.
Until next time.
You. Appreciate it.